Commander Hejun stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship, his face grim as he watched the evacuation ships fleeing from Proxima Centauri. The once thriving human colony was now overrun with the silvery mass of the Void Swarm, creatures made of silicon that consumed everything in their path. Eastern Quadrant status? Hejun asked, his voice steady despite the chaos. Lieutenant Min looked up from her console, eyes wide with fear. Gone, sir. Complete loss of signal. The swarm has breached the orbital defense ring. Around them, the alien crew worked frantically. The Galactic Coalition had brought together 17 different species, but none had faced an enemy like this before. The Void Swarm didn't negotiate. They didn't take prisoners. They simply consumed and converted all matter into more of themselves. Refugee evacuation progress? Hejun asked. 60% complete, Min reported. But at current swarm progression rates, she hesitated. Tell me, the colony will be completely overrun in 4 hours. Hejun nodded slowly. The news wasn't unexpected, but it still felt like a physical blow. Proxima Centauri was humanity's first step into the stars, established 50 years ago. Now it would be their first major loss. Through the view screen, he watched a civilian transport take a direct hit from a swarm projectile. The ship's shields flared bright blue before failing completely. Within seconds, tiny silver dots, individual swarm units, attached to the hull and began boring through. Can we help that transport? Hejun asked. The weapons officer, a tall Trilaxian named Dak, shook his head. Negative, Commander. Once the swarm attaches, rescue becomes impossible. Hejun closed his eyes briefly. 2,000 civilians had just been sentenced to death. The Void Swarm would convert their bodies into more swarm units, using their very atoms to grow stronger. Commander, called an officer from the communication station. Message from Coalition High Command. Display, Hejun ordered. The main screen shifted to show Admiral Pak, the human representative on the Coalition Council. Her expression told Hejun everything before she spoke a word. Commander Hejun, I regret to inform you that the Coalition Council has voted. Earth and the Sol system are to be abandoned. All Coalition forces are ordered to withdraw to the secondary defense line at Barnard Star. The bridge fell silent. Even the alien officers, who had no personal connection to Earth, seemed shocked by the decision. Admiral, there are 11 billion humans in the Sol system, Hejun said, keeping his voice level. The evacuation would take months, even with every available ship. Admiral Pak's face showed pain, but her voice remained firm. The Council is aware. Their models show the swarm will reach Sol in 10 days. There is no time for full evacuation. Earth has been designated as a strategic sacrifice. Hejun felt cold anger spreading through his chest. The Council expects humanity to just die, to buy them time. The vote was 13-4, Admiral Pak said. Only the human, Centaurian, Proxan, and Trilaxian representatives opposed. The Coalition believes this is the only way to save the rest of galactic civilization. I understand, Hejun said, though he didn't. Not really. After the transmission ended, the bridge remained silent. Finally, Lieutenant Min spoke. Sir, what are your orders? Hejun looked around at his crew, a mix of humans and aliens who had fought together for 3 years against the swarm's advance. We continue the evacuation of Proxima Centauri as planned. Every life we save matters. And after that, asked Dak, the weapons officer. We return to Earth, Hejun said simply. But Commander, Min said carefully, Coalition orders are to withdraw to Barnard Star. Hejun nodded. I am aware of Coalition orders. I am also aware that I am human, and Earth is my home. Anyone who wishes to follow the Coalition's retreat may take shuttles to the Trilaxian cruiser when we complete this evacuation. I will not judge you. No one moved. No one spoke. Very well, Hejun said. Let's save who we can here, then head home. What the Coalition Council failed to understand was fundamental. The alien species who made up most of the Coalition had evolved from herd animals, pack animals, or other prey species. Their instinct when faced with a superior predator was to run, to hide, to sacrifice the few for the many. Humans were different. Humans had evolved as apex predators on a world full of dangers. When cornered, humans didn't surrender. They fought harder. They became more dangerous. And humanity had been preparing for this moment since they first joined the Coalition and realized how vulnerable the alien alliance truly was. 3 days later, Hajun's ship arrived at Earth alongside the refugee fleet from Proxima Centauri. What they found surprised even him. Earth's orbital space, usually filled with civilian stations and commercial vessels, had been transformed. Massive shipyards stretched across Earth's orbit, and within them were warships unlike anything the Coalition had ever built. "Commander," Lieutenant Min said, her voice filled with wonder, "those ships are at least 20 kilometers long." Hajun nodded slowly. The Coalition treaties limited military vessels to 2 kilometers. It seems Earth found a loophole. His communication panel lit up with an incoming transmission. The face that appeared belonged to Admiral Sang-hoon, Earth Defense Force Commander. "Welcome home, Commander Hajun," Sang-hoon said. "I understand the Coalition has decided to sacrifice our planet." "Yes, Admiral." The Council voted to abandon Sol's system. Admiral Sang-hoon smiled thinly. "Well, they'd made their choice. Now they can watch us make ours." "You're looking at Project Leviathan, Commander." For 20 years, while playing the role of the Coalition's obedient junior partner, we've been building the largest warships in galactic history. Hajun stared at the massive vessels. "How is this possible?" "The Coalition monitors all military construction. These aren't classified as warships," Sang-hoon explained. "They're orbital defense platforms with propulsion systems, a technical distinction that let us build without restrictions." On the screen behind Admiral Sang-hoon, more of the enormous vessels moved into view, their hulls dark and angular, bristling with weapon systems that made Coalition ships look like toys. "The Void Swarm believes they're facing a galaxy of prey animals," Sang-hoon continued. "They don't understand that they've cornered a planet of predators. In 7 days, when they arrive at Sol, they'll learn what humanity is truly capable of." Hajun felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. "What can we do to help, Admiral?" "Dock your ship at Luna Base for resupply. Then join the evacuation fleet. Every civilian ship is being converted to carry as many people as possible to safety beyond Neptune. The Coalition may have abandoned us, but we won't abandon our own." As Hajun's ship moved toward Luna, he watched Earth's massive warships performing maneuvers no vessel that size should be capable of. The Coalition had always treated humans as technologically backwards, useful only for their aggression and determination. Now the galaxy would learn that humanity had simply been waiting, watching, and preparing. The Void Swarm thought they were hunting easy prey. Instead, they were about to face humanity's full fury. Defeat had seemed certain, until humanity's colossal warships arrived. Ambassador Park stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship, watching the final evacuation ships leave Earth's orbit. His thin fingers tapped nervously on the control panel as the fleet prepared to jump away from the Sol system. Around him, alien crew members worked in grim silence. No one wanted to be the one who abandoned humanity to their fate, but the Council's decision was final. "Jump coordinates locked, Ambassador," said the Trilorian navigator, his blue skin glowing faintly in the dim light. "All ships report ready for departure." Park nodded slowly. "Begin jump sequence." The massive engines of the Coalition fleet began charging, preparing to tear a hole in space-time that would carry them safely away from the approaching Void Swarm. The evacuation had managed to save barely 3 million humans, a tiny fraction of Earth's population. The rest would be left behind, a sacrifice to buy the Coalition time. "Ambassador," called the sensor officer suddenly. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from Earth orbit." Park turned sharply. Swarm vessels? No, sir. The signatures are enormous, unlike anything I've ever seen. The main view screen shifted to show Earth's orbital shipyards. Massive structures were detaching from the docking clamps, structures so large they dwarfed even the Coalition flagship. What are those? Park whispered. The communications officer's console lit up with an incoming transmission. Sir, we're receiving a message from Earth Defense Force Command. On screen, Park ordered. The face that appeared belonged to Admiral Yoon of the Earth Defense Force. Her expression was calm, almost amused. Coalition Command, this is Admiral Yoon of the Earth Defense Force. We've noted your strategic withdrawal. Stand by to observe human battle doctrine in action. Park stepped forward. Admiral Yoon, the Coalition Council has determined Earth's defense is untenable. Our models predict complete planetary loss within 14 days of swarm arrival. Admiral Yoon smiled slightly. Your models don't account for human ingenuity, Ambassador. For 3 generations, we've been building something in secret while playing the role of your obedient junior partners. The Coalition wouldn't approve our defensive strategy, so we didn't ask permission. The view screen split to show what was happening in Earth orbit. Massive structures were now fully detached from the shipyards. Angular, brutal-looking vessels that made Coalition warships look like toys in comparison. By your treaties, we were limited to vessels under 2 kilometers in length, Admiral Yoon continued. You'll notice we took a creative interpretation of that restriction. These aren't ships by our classification. They're mobile defensive platforms. The EDF Thermopylae, Normandy, and Midway are now activating. Recommend you maintain your current distance. Park stared in disbelief. The vessels, or platforms, as Yoon called them, were at least 20 kilometers long, with hulls composed of layered armor unlike anything he had seen before. They'd bristled with weapon systems that hummed with barely contained energy. Impossible, whispered the Trilorian science officer. Those vessels would require energy sources beyond anything in known technology. How long have you been hiding these? Park asked, finding his voice. Since we joined the Coalition and realized how vulnerable your alliance truly was, Admiral Yoon replied frankly. Humanity has always prepared for the worst. Ambassador, when we saw how the Coalition handled the first swarm incursions 10 years ago, we knew we couldn't trust our survival to your consensus-based decision-making. On the screen, more vessels detached from Earth's orbital structures. In total, Park counted 7 of the enormous warships, each one capable of facing an entire swarm fleet alone. Ambassador, the sensor officer called. I'm detecting unusual energy readings from those ships. They appear to be using dark matter reactors. A murmur of shock ran through the bridge. Dark matter technology had been banned by the Coalition centuries ago due to its instability and potential for catastrophic failure. Admiral Yoon, Park said carefully, those power systems are prohibited by Coalition law. We're aware, Yoon replied. But when facing extinction, prohibitions become somewhat less compelling, don't you think? The swarm will be here in 3 days. We suggest your fleet either depart now or move to a safe observation distance. The Coalition captain, a thin Vesperian named Krill, approached Park. Ambassador, we should resume our jump. The humans have clearly violated multiple treaty provisions. The Council will need to be informed. Park hesitated. The human vessels were indeed illegal by Coalition standards, but they also represented something the Coalition had lacked in its fight against the swarm: a genuine chance at victory. Admiral Yoon, Park said, ignoring the captain's suggestion, the swarm will arrive with over 4,000 ships. Even with these platforms of yours, the odds are. The odds have always been against humanity, Ambassador, Yoon interrupted. That's why we became what we are. Your species evolved in peaceful environments, developing technology to avoid conflict. Humans evolved as hunters on a death world, perfecting the art of war for thousands of years before we ever reached space. On the screen behind Admiral Yoon, The massive warships were now moving into defensive formations around Earth. Their size defied belief, and the energy readings they produced were off the charts. "Cancel the jump," Park said suddenly. Captain Krill stared at him. "Ambassador, the Council's orders." "The Council isn't here," Park replied firmly. "I am, and I want to see what these human ships can do." Admiral Yoon smiled. "A wise decision, Ambassador, though I suggest you maintain at least 1 light minute of distance. The weapons systems we're about to deploy have extensive areas of effect." As the transmission ended, Park turned to the bridge crew. "Move us to a safe observation position, and prepare all sensor arrays to record everything that happens here." "May I ask why, Ambassador?" Captain Krill asked stiffly. Park watched as the human warships continued their deployment, their massive hulls gleaming in the light of Earth's sun. "Because either we're about to witness the last stand of humanity," he said quietly, "or we're about to see the beginning of a new phase in this war. Either way, the Council needs to know exactly what happened here." The Coalition fleet moved to a safe distance, their sensors trained on the human vessels. For the first time since the Void Swarm had appeared, Park felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. In 3 days, the swarm would arrive expecting to find a defenseless planet ripe for consumption. Instead, they would face the full might of humanity's secret fleet, the colossal warships that no one in the Coalition had believed possible. The humans had been planning this moment for generations, building in secret while pretending to be the Coalition's junior partners. Now, with their backs against the wall, they would show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. Park settled into his command chair, eyes fixed on the screen showing Earth's defenders. "Now," he murmured, "we will see what humans are really made of." The EDF Thermopylae moved slowly into position, its massive hull reflecting the light of Earth's sun. At nearly 20 kilometers long, the vessel dwarfed anything the Coalition had ever built. Captain Jin stood at the command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching Void Swarm fleet. "Swarm vessels have changed course," reported Lieutenant Su, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "They've abandoned pursuit of the refugee ships and are moving to engage us." Jin nodded calmly. For 3 years, the Void Swarm had consumed colony after colony, adapting to every weapon the Coalition deployed against them. No species had been able to stop their advance. Until now. "How many?" Jin asked. 4,632 ships in the main fleet," Su answered, "more arriving through the outer system jump points." Jin studied the enemy formation. The swarm always attacked in the same way: overwhelming numbers, sacrificing their forward elements to learn about enemy defenses, then adapting to counter them. This strategy had proven effective against the Coalition races, who valued each life and each ship too highly to match the swarm's willingness to sacrifice. Humanity had a different approach. "Status of the other vessels?" Jin asked. "EDF Normandy and Midway report ready for combat," Su replied. "The smaller defense platforms are in position around Earth. Dark matter reactors on all vessels operating at optimal levels." Jin tapped his communication panel. "Dr. Seo, status of the weapon systems." Dr. Seo's face appeared on a small screen. As Chief Weapons Officer, she had spent 15 years developing the Thermopylae's offensive capabilities. "Gravitational lensing weapons at full charge, Captain," she reported. "Ray Caesar systems online and targeting. We're ready." Jin nodded and opened a channel to Admiral Hyun, who commanded the entire Earth defense fleet from the EDF Normandy. "Admiral, Thermopylae reports ready for combat." Admiral Hyun's weathered face appeared on the main screen. "Acknowledged, Captain Jin. The swarm will enter weapons range in 3 minutes. Execute primary defense protocol on my mark." Jin turned to his crew. "You all know what we're fighting for. Earth is behind us. Our families are behind us. Everything humanity has built is behind us. We do not retreat from this position. Is that understood?" "Yes, Captain," came the unified response. On the tactical display, The swarm fleet approached rapidly. Their ships were smaller than human vessels, but far more numerous. A cloud of silver-black that blotted out the stars behind them. "They're launching attack drones," Sue reported. "Tens of thousands of them." Jin pressed a button on his chair. "All personnel, secure for combat. Activate metamaterial hull shielding." Throughout the massive ship, crew members strapped into their stations as the vessel's hull began to change. The layered metamaterials that formed the outer skin of the thermopyle shifted at the molecular level, creating a structure that could absorb and redistribute energy from enemy weapons. "Admiral Han is hailing all vessels," Sue announced. Han's voice echoed through the command center. "All vessels, this is Admiral Han. The swarm believes they face a defenseless planet. They believe humanity will fall as easily as the other worlds they've consumed. They are wrong. Execute primary defense protocol. Now." Jin turned to Dr. Seo. "Fire gravitational lensing weapons." Dr. Seo's hands flew across her control panel, targeting lead elements of swarm fleet, firing. The space between the human vessels and the swarm warped visibly as the gravitational weapons activated. These weren't conventional weapons that fired projectiles or energy beams. Instead, they manipulated the fabric of space-time itself, creating artificial singularities that tore apart anything caught in their influence. The front third of the swarm fleet simply ceased to exist, crushed into subatomic particles as space collapsed around them. "Ray seeker systems locked on secondary targets," Dr. Seo reported. Firing. Beams of concentrated light shot from the human vessels, but these weren't ordinary lasers. They were relativistic lasers, RASERs, beams that approached the speed of light with such precision that they cut through the swarm vessels like paper. Jin watched the tactical display as hundreds of enemy ships vanished in seconds. "The swarm is reforming," Sue reported. "They're attempting to adapt to our weapons." "As expected," Jin replied. "Prepare secondary protocols." On the observation deck of the Coalition command ship, Commander Ta watched the battle unfold with stunned disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered to Ambassador Park beside him. "The energy requirements for those weapons would drain a star." Park's eyes widened in realization. Dark matter reactors. Technology the Coalition banned centuries ago due to instability risks. The human vessels moved with surprising agility for their size, their synchronized defensive systems creating overlapping fields that neutralized the swarm's counterattacks. The swarm drones, which had cut through Coalition ships with ease, simply disintegrated against the metamaterial hulls of the human warships. "They're adapting their attack pattern," Sue reported to Captain Jin. "Concentrating fire on the Normandy's port section." Jin nodded. Admiral Han anticipated this. "Implement counter-adaptation protocol." As the swarm focused their attack, the EDF Midway moved into position, deploying a field of microdrones that intercepted the swarm vessels. Each microdrone contained a small gravitational lensing device that activated on contact with enemy ships. "The swarm is attempting to overwhelm our defenses with numbers," Dr. Seo reported. "They're sacrificing their smaller vessels to drain our energy reserves." Jin smiled slightly. "That might work against Coalition ships. Our reactors have different limitations." He opened a channel to the engine room. "Chief Park, increase power to the forward weapons arrays. Let's show the swarm what dark matter reactors can really do." "Aye, Captain," came the response. "Increasing power by 200%. The Thermopyla's hull began to glow with barely contained energy as the gravitational weapons charged to levels that would have been impossible with conventional power sources. When they fired again, the effect was devastating. An entire quadrant of the swarm fleet vanished, leaving nothing but floating debris. For the first time since the war began, the Void Swarm did something no one had ever seen before. They began to retreat. "They're pulling back," Sue announced, disbelief in her voice. "The swarm is retreating from Earth orbit." A cheer went up from the crew, but Jin raised his hand for silence. "This is only the beginning," he said firmly. They'll analyze our weapons and return with countermeasures. But today, we've proven something vital. The swarm can be defeated. He opened a channel to Admiral Hyun. Admiral, the swarm is retreating from Earth. Request permission to pursue. Admiral Hyun appeared on screen, her expression severe, but with a hint of satisfaction. Negative. Captain. Hold position. This was just their vanguard. Let them run back to their main fleet with the news that humanity is not the easy prey they expected. Jin nodded. Understood, Admiral. On the Coalition observation vessel, Commander Ta turned to Ambassador Park. We must report this to the Council immediately. The humans have weapons technology that could turn the tide of the entire war. Park nodded slowly, his eyes still fixed on the massive human warships that had just accomplished what the entire Coalition fleet had failed to do for years. They had made the Void Swarm retreat. The Council needs to understand what this means, Park said quietly. Humanity isn't just another member species. They might be our only hope for survival. As the remains of the swarm fleet disappeared into the darkness of space, Earth's defenders maintained their positions. The first battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Still, for the first time in years, hope flickered across human and coalition faces alike. The Void Swarm had finally met its match. On the third day of the Battle of Seoul, Captain June stood on the bridge of the EDF Normandy, watching as Void Swarm reinforcements poured through the outer system jump points. The initial human victory had been impressive, but the swarm had returned with 3 times as many ships. Their silver-black vessels filled the view screens, advancing in new formations designed to counter human weapons. Hull breach in sections 20 through 35, reported Lieutenant Hana, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. The swarm has adapted to our metamaterial shielding. They're using some kind of phase-shifted projectile that passes through our outer layers. Captain June studied the damage reports. Nearly a quarter of the Normandy's port side had been compromised. Casualty report. 300 confirmed dead. Another 500 unaccounted for, Hannah replied grimly. The ship shuddered as another volley hit. Emergency lights flashed throughout the bridge. Captain, called the chief engineer over the comm system. The reactor containment in Section 28 is failing. If the swarm breaches that area, we'll lose the entire ship. June made his decision quickly. Begin evacuation of all compromised sections. Move all personnel to the starboard half of the vessel. Sir, Hannah questioned. That's nearly 8,000 crew members. I'm aware, Lieutenant. Once evacuation is complete, we're going to deliberately collapse the damaged sections. Understanding dawned on Hannah's face. The Normandy maneuver. We've never tested it outside of simulations. Today we test it for real, Jun replied. Alert Admiral Hyun of our intentions. Across the Sol system, the battle raged. The human warships had proven formidable, but the swarm was adapting. For every swarm vessel destroyed, 3 more took its place. The EDF Midway and Thermopylae fought near Jupiter, protecting the civilian shelters hidden in the gas giant's moons. Smaller human vessels engaged swarm scouts near Mars. Aboard the Coalition observation ship, Ambassador Park and Commander Ta watched in silence as the EDF Normandy took heavy damage. They can't hold, Commander Ta said quietly. Even with their advanced technology, the humans are outnumbered. Park didn't respond. He had spent 3 days watching humanity fight with a determination no coalition species had ever shown. If any race could find a way to survive this, it would be humans. On the Normandy, Captain June received confirmation that the damaged sections had been evacuated. All personnel clear, Captain, Hannah reported. Engineering is ready to initiate controlled collapse on your command. June opened a channel to all ships in the area. This is Captain June of the EDF Normandy. All vessels maintain minimum safe distance of 50,000 kilometers. We are initiating the Normandy maneuver. He turned to his chief science officer. Begin sequence. Throughout the damaged sections of the massive warship, specially designed charges detonated in precise sequence. The Normandy's dark matter reactor channeled energy into the collapsing sections, creating a carefully controlled gravitational implosion. Space itself seemed to bend as the port side of the Normandy collapsed inward. The gravitational wave that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, a ripple in spacetime that expanded outward at near light speed. Every swarm vessel within 30,000 kilometers simply ceased to exist, crushed by forces they couldn't defend against. Hundreds of ships vanished in an instant. "Maneuver complete," reported Hannah, awe in her voice. "The Normandy is stable. Damage reports from the rest of the fleet indicate our allies were outside the effect radius." June nodded, surveying what remained of his ship. The Normandy was now missing nearly a third of its structure, but the remaining sections were intact and functional. "Status of the swarm fleet?" he asked. "They've pulled back to regroup," Hannah said. "We destroyed approximately 1,200 vessels with the maneuver." On the 5th day of battle, the swarm unveiled its final weapon. A massive construct, twice the size of the largest human vessels, emerged from the outer system. Its design was different from other swarm ships, a spherical core surrounded by rotating rings of dark metal. "What is that?" Park asked, leaning forward in his seat on the Coalition vessel. A human liaison officer assigned to the observation ship answered grimly. "That's a planet killer. It induces solar flares in stars, rendering entire systems uninhabitable. The swarm has only deployed it twice before. Then humanity has lost," Commander Ta said softly. "Even your impressive ships can't stop a weapon that affects stars themselves." The liaison officer smiled thinly. "Watch us try." The EDF Midway, commanded by Captain Min, moved to intercept the planet killer. The massive human warship positioned itself between the swarm weapon and the sun. "All weapons have minimal effect on the target," reported the Midway's weapons officer. "Their shielding is reflecting our gravitational weapons." Captain Min nodded calmly. "Then we do this the old-fashioned way." She opened a channel to Admiral Hyun on the Thermopylae. "Admiral, requesting permission to execute Protocol Omega." There was a long pause before Admiral Hyun responded. "Permission granted, Captain Min. The Earth Defense Force thanks you and your crew for your sacrifice." Min turned to her crew. "All personnel to emergency evacuation pods. The command crew will remain to guide the ship." As thousands of crew members raced to escape pods, Min and her bridge officers calculated the perfect approach vector. The Midway's engines fired at maximum power, driving the massive warship directly toward the planet killer. "Impact in 30 seconds, reported the navigation officer. Min opened a channel to all remaining crew. "It has been my highest honor to serve with you." "For Earth." "For Earth," came the unified response. The Midway slammed into the planet killer at tremendous speed. The human vessel's dark matter reactor had been deliberately destabilized, creating an explosion that ripped through both ships. When the light faded, the planet killer had been split in two, its core systems destroyed. The Midway had sacrificed nearly 40% of its structure, but had saved Earth's sun. On the 7th day, Admiral Han enacted humanity's final strategy. The remaining human warships coordinated their gravitational weapons, targeting not individual swarm vessels, but the quantum communication network that linked them together. "Fire all gravitational lensing arrays simultaneously," Hyun ordered. "Target the frequencies we identified in the swarm's command ships." The combined firepower of Earth's defenders created a cascading failure in the swarm's hive network. Without central coordination, the remaining enemy vessels fell into disarray. Some continued to attack in random patterns, others simply drifted, powerless. By the end of the 7th day, the Battle of Seoul was over. The void swarm had been driven from the system, leaving behind mountains of debris that would orbit the sun for centuries. Admiral Hyun, her uniform scorched and her left arm in a sling, addressed the coalition representatives who had boarded the Thermopylae after the battle. "The swarm has been driven from Seoul," she explained, projecting a galactic map showing swarm concentrations throughout coalition space. But this was just their vanguard. We've proven they can be defeated, but only through coordinated action. Humanity is prepared to lead this counteroffensive, but we require full coalition support. Ambassador Park, humbled by what he had witnessed, nodded slowly. The Coalition Council has reconsidered its assessment of humanity's role in our alliance. Your technology, your strategies, your willingness to sacrifice. These are things we need if we're to survive as a galactic community. Admiral Hyun's expression remained stern. Then we have work to do, Ambassador. The swarm will regroup and attack again. Next time, we bring the fight to them. As the coalition representatives departed, Hyun turned to look out at Earth through the viewports. The planet seemed peaceful from space, giving no hint of the desperate battle that had raged around it for 7 days. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven something vital. The Void Swarm could be defeated. And now, with the coalition finally ready to follow humanity's lead, there was hope for the galaxy. Admiral Min stood on the observation deck of the EDF Stalingrad, watching as coalition ships practiced combat maneuvers alongside their human counterparts. The massive warship had been commissioned just 3 months ago, the newest addition to humanity's expanding fleet. At 25 kilometers long, it was even larger than the vessels that had defended Earth during the Battle of Sol. Impressive, isn't it? She said to Commander Kang, who stood beside her. 1 year ago, the coalition was ready to sacrifice Earth. Now, we lead the war effort. Commander Kang nodded, his expression thoughtful. As the head of Coalition Special Forces, he had spent the past year working closely with human military leaders, learning their strategies and tactics. The Trilorian fleet has improved significantly, he noted, watching as alien vessels executed a complex defensive formation. 6 months ago, they could barely maintain position during combat simulations. Min smiled. They're quick learners. All the coalition species are, once they overcome their instinctive aversion to conflict. Below them on the training deck, human officers were teaching alien personnel hand-to-hand combat techniques. Though the technology of war had advanced beyond physical confrontation centuries ago, humans still maintained these traditions. Now they prove useful as the Void Swarm occasionally managed to board coalition vessels. 17 star systems reclaimed, Kang said, almost to himself. When the Battle of Sol ended, I didn't believe your Admiral Hyun when she claimed humanity would lead a counteroffensive. The swarm had never been pushed back before. We're just getting started, Min replied. The shipyards at Proxima Centauri will complete 3 more vessels like the Stalingrad next month. The Arcturus yards are building specialized hunter-killer ships to target swarm command vessels. Throughout coalition space, massive construction efforts were underway. Shipyards that had once built civilian transport vessels now constructed warships based on human designs. The dark matter reactors that powered these ships had been refined, made safer and more efficient by combined human and coalition engineering teams. A door slid open behind them, and Admiral Han entered the observation deck. Though she now commanded the entire United Fleet, she still carried herself with the same quiet determination that had seen humanity through its darkest hour. Admiral Min, Commander Kang, she greeted them. I hope the demonstration meets your expectations. Kang bowed slightly, a gesture of respect he had learned from his human colleagues. More than meets them, Admiral Hyun. Your training programs have transformed our forces. Hyun joined them at the viewport. The Coalition Council is arriving tomorrow to observe our progress. I trust everything is ready for their inspection. Min nodded. All systems operational. The Stalingrad's weapons systems have been calibrated to Coalition specifications. We'll demonstrate the new gravitational shield technology during the inspection. Good, Hyun said. This visit is more important than they realize. The next phase of our offensive depends on full Council support. The 3 officers watched in silence as the training exercises continued. On a nearby tactical display, a map showed the current state of the war. Human-led forces had pushed the swarm back from the core coalition worlds, reclaiming 17 star systems in just 1 year. But vast swaths of space remained under swarm control, including several former Coalition colony worlds. "Your species continues to surprise us," Commander Kang said after a long pause. "When humanity joined the Coalition 30 years ago, we thought you were technologically primitive. We never imagined that we'd been preparing for something like this since first contact." Hyun smiled slightly. Humanity understood something fundamental that the Coalition missed. Peace is not the natural state of the universe. The cosmos doesn't reward the enlightened. It rewards the prepared. Min studied the tactical display, noting the patterns of swarm movement at the edges of reclaimed territory. "They're adapting again, changing their tactics to counter our gravitational weapons." "They always adapt," Hyun replied calmly. "So will we. That's the advantage humanity brings to this fight. We evolved in an environment that required constant adaptation. Where your species developed technology to avoid conflict, we developed technology to win conflicts." A junior officer approached, saluting crisply. "Admiral Hyun, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command. The new fleet is preparing to depart." Hyun nodded. "Put it on the main screen." The viewport shimmered, part of it transforming into a display showing Earth's orbital shipyards. 5 massive warships, each larger than even the Stalingrad, were detaching from their construction docks. Their dark hulls gleamed in the sunlight, weapon systems running through automated calibration sequences. The Leningrad, Kursk, Verdun, Somme, and Iwo Jima. Hyun identified them, each equipped with the new quantum displacement drives and enhanced gravitational weapons. "Where will they deploy?" Kang asked. "A hive cluster in the Sagittarius Arm," Hyun replied. "Intelligence suggests that's where the swarm originated. We're taking the fight to their home territory." Kang's eyes widened. "That's over 6,000 light-years from here. The logistics alone would be impossible with Coalition technology." Min finished for him. "But not with ours. The quantum displacement drives allow for instantaneous travel across vast distances. No jump points needed." The Coalition commander looked stunned. "You've solved faster than light travel without relying on natural jump points. But that technology has eluded Coalition scientists for centuries. We've been working on it for decades," Hyun explained. "The threat of extinction is a powerful motivator for innovation." On the display, the 5 new warships activated their engines, moving away from Earth in perfect formation. They would rendezvous with other fleet elements before making the quantum jump to the swarm's home territory. The Void Swarm believed it faced a galaxy of prey, Hyun continued, watching the ships depart. Instead, they awakened a predator species hiding in plain sight. Now they'll learn what happens when humanity brings war to an enemy's doorstep. Commander Kang was silent for a long moment. "When humanity joined the Coalition, many questioned what you could contribute. Your technology seemed primitive, your ships small and inefficient. The Council only approved your membership because of your mineral resources and your willingness to serve as frontline soldiers." "We know," Min said quietly. "We were aware of the Coalition's assessment from the beginning. And yet you never corrected us," Kang said. "You never revealed your true capabilities." Hyun turned to face him directly. "Would you have believed us? Or would you have seen us as a threat to be contained? Humanity has watched species rise and fall throughout our history. We learned long ago that revealing your full strength rarely leads to peace." The Coalition commander nodded slowly. "I understand now. You were waiting for a moment when the galaxy truly needed what humanity could offer. And now that moment has arrived," Min said, gesturing to the tactical display where the 17 reclaimed star systems glowed blue amid the red of swarm-controlled space. Outside the viewport, the training exercises had concluded. Coalition and human ships moved in synchronized patterns, preparing to dock with the Stalingrad. In 1 year, the United Forces had accomplished what the Coalition alone had failed to do in a decade of fighting. They had pushed the swarm back and reclaimed lost territory. "Tomorrow, when the Council arrives," Hyun said, we will show them our plans for the next phase of the counteroffensive. With their support, we can reclaim another 30 systems within 6 months. And if they hesitate? Kang asked. Han's expression hardened slightly. Then humanity will proceed alone if necessary. We will not allow the swarm to threaten Earth again. As they spoke, the 5 new warships reached their departure point and vanished in flashes of light, making their quantum jumps to the distant arm of the galaxy. The species once considered primitive had become the shield and sword of galactic civilization. The age of human ascendancy had begun.